she killed the Night King, a girl from Winterfell, trained in the dark, moving on instinct, drove a blade into something ancient and terrible. Her name was Arya Stark. That moment, that impossible moment, was the sum of everything that came before. Every loss and lesson, every identity she wore and discarded, every name she whispered like a prayer. This is not a hero's journey. It is the story of a girl the world tried to erase, and what she became. She was born the second daughter of Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, raised in a castle 8,000 years old, in a family whose words were not a boast, but a warning. Winter is coming. The Starks were defined by what they endured, not what they celebrated. Duty over comfort, survival over glory, the cold truth over the comforting lie. Arya was a Stark in ways that ran too deep to name, but she was also something the Stark legacy had no place for. Not a future lord, not a lady, not something that could be shaped into what the world expected. We follow her entire journey, from her first lesson with a sword to the final name crossed from her list, from the girl who could not fit the world to the woman who sailed beyond it. This is the story of Arya Stark, and it begins, as all the best stories do, at home, before everything went wrong. Winterfell, in the years before the war, is easy to misremember. Looking back through everything that happens later, it can start to feel like the calm was always temporary, like grief was always waiting just below the surface of those grey stone walls. And maybe it was. But before the fall, Winterfell was also simply a home. A loud, cold, complicated home full of people who loved each other in the blunt way of northern families. Not many words, but the words they used meant something. That quality, that restraint wrapped around something real, defined the Starks as much as any sigil or words. Arya Stark grew up in the middle of it. She was not the eldest, not the youngest, not the heir or the spare. Robb was the future lord, already being shaped for that role. Sansa was the eldest daughter, being polished into the kind of lady who could sit at the high table of any great house in Westeros. Sansa knew exactly what to say and when. Bran was curious and athletic, and still young enough that his future hadn't been firmly drawn. Rickon was small and wild, and largely governed by instinct. And Arya was whatever she was, a category entirely her own. She was dark-haired and quick-eyed, more likely to be found in the training yard than the sewing room. She was more interested in how a thing worked than in whether it was proper. She asked questions nobody was quite prepared for. She climbed things she wasn't supposed to climb. She drifted through the castle, like she was always slightly ahead of wherever anyone expected her to be. Her ears found keyholes, and her eyes found things nobody else thought to watch. The word people reached for most often was willful, which is the word people use when they mean capable but inconvenient. Sansa was the easier sister to understand. Sansa fit. She was genuinely drawn to the things expected of her, the songs, the stories, the courtly rituals, the idea of knights and honor and romance. She was not performing. She simply loved those things, and the world loved her back for it. Arya saw all of this with something that wasn't quite contempt and wasn't quite envy. It was more like bewilderment. She could see the shape of the life being offered to Sansa, and she understood, in a clear and early way, that it would never fit her. Not because she was rebellious by nature, but because she was honest by nature. And honesty, in a world built on performance, is almost always inconvenient. That tension between who she was and what the world expected was present from the very beginning. The direwolves arrived when Arya was still very young. They were a litter of 6 pups found beside the body of their mother, a direwolf killed by a stag's antler, 1 for each Stark child. Ned saw the omen and let them keep the wolves. Arya's wolf was named Nymeria, after the warrior queen of the Rhoynar. Nymeria was a woman who had led her people across an ocean to a new world, rather than submit to conquest. The name was Arya's choice. The symbolism was not accidental, even if she couldn't have fully articulated it then. Nymeria was fast and fierce, and completely devoted to her. Their bond was the kind of easy, unspoken understanding that Arya rarely found with people. The wolf knew her without explanation, and that was rare. Jon Snow understood her too. Jon was Ned's bastard son, or so everyone believed, raised in the castle alongside his true-born siblings. He was always aware of the distance the name Snow put between him and the name Stark. He and Arya were the ones who didn't quite fit the expected pattern. Robb had the lordship waiting for him. Sansa had the marriage and the court. Even Bran had his future mapped in outline. Jon had nothing guaranteed, and Arya had nothing desired. At least, nothing the world was offering. They found each other in that gap. Jon paid attention to her in a way that mattered. He didn't try to make her into something she wasn't. He didn't suggest she apply herself more seriously to embroidery. He watched her, really watched her, and saw what she was. Quick, precise, inclined toward action over ceremony. She had a fighter's instincts in a lord's daughter's body. Jon saw all of that clearly, and he acted on what he saw. He commissioned a sword for her. He had it made to her exact scale by the castle smith. Small, thin, pointed. Not a war sword, not something built for weight and power, but a blade built for someone fast and technical. It was built for someone who wins not by overpowering, but by being exactly where they need to be, at exactly the right moment. He gave it to her in private, the way gifts that actually mean something are always given. She held it, and immediately knew what it was for, even before she knew how to use it. She named it Needle, because it was thin and sharp. She named it because that was the kind of work she was good at, precise work, work that required patience and placement. Naming it something associated with sewing was also the kind of joke she and Jon both appreciated. Jon gave her a weapon built for who she actually was, not who the world wanted her to be. Every time she keeps it, every time she refuses to throw it away or surrender it or let it go, she is holding on to that. She is holding on to being known. Ned Stark watched all of this, and to his enormous credit, he paid attention to what he saw. He observed Arya in the yard early on, shooting arrows at a target. She was doing it badly by conventional standards, but with a persistence and intensity that said something more important than accuracy. He did not see a daughter who needed to be redirected toward more appropriate pursuits. He saw a daughter who needed better tools, and so he hired Syria Forel. That decision, quiet and practical as it was, would prove to be one of the most consequential choices Ned Stark ever made. Not because it turned Arya into a fighter, although it did that, but because it told her something she would carry for the rest of her life. It told her that who she is worth training. It told her that the thing she already is something a great man considered worth developing. Ned's love for his children was often expressed through action rather than words. This single decision, to hire the finest swordsman available and set him to teaching his daughter, speaks more clearly than any speech he ever gives. He does not soften her. He does not redirect her. He meets her where she is. At this point in the story, Winterfell is whole. The Starks are alive, and the war has not begun. The betrayals have not happened, and the list doesn't exist yet. Arya is simply a girl in a cold castle, quick and honest, and slightly too much for the world she was born into. King's Landing arrives like a wall of noise. After Winterfell, its silence, its grey stone, its cold, clean air, the capital is an assault on every sense at once. 50,000 people packed inside walls that were never quite built for all of them. The smell of the harbour, the river, the markets, the bodies. Colour everywhere, bright and performative. Southern lords in silk and gold moving through streets where beggars die in the gutters between feast days. Everything loud, everything crowded, everything pretending to be something slightly better than it is. She hates it immediately. This is not homesickness exactly. It is something more instinctive than that. She reads environments the way some people read faces, and what King's Landing tells her from the first day is that nothing here is quite what it presents itself as. The smiles are calculations. The courtesies are weapons. The beauty of the Red Keep is a surface laid over something much older and much darker. She feels it without being able to name it. The city is a performance, and she has never been able to perform. That gap between what King's Landing is and what it pretends to be is something Arya registers in her bones from the moment she arrives. Sansa moves through King's Landing like she was made for it. She is drawn to the colour, the ceremony, the proximity to the stories she grew up loving. She sees Prince Joffrey and finds him handsome and charming, which he is, on the surface, in the way that beautiful things with nothing underneath them always seem most beautiful from a distance. Arya watches her sister navigate the court with genuine fluency and feels the gap between them open wider than it has ever been. Jealousy isn't the right word for what she feels. Relief is closer. Relief that she doesn't have to do it herself. Ned arranges her training quickly, understanding that an idle Arya in King's Landing is trouble waiting to happen. He finds Syrio Forel, former First Sword of Braavos, now between engagements. Syrio is a small, neat man with quick eyes and an accent that wraps around his words like water around stone. They meet in a training room in the Red Keep. He looks at her the way a craftsman looks at raw material, not dismissively, but with an appraising patience, deciding what it might become. He asks her to show him what she can do. She shows him. It is not much technically, but the way she moves, forward always, never back, no hesitation before committing, tells him what he needs to know. He nods once, and they begin. Syrio Forel teaches water dancing, the Braavosi school of swordsmanship, and it is unlike anything practiced in Westeros. Northern fighting is built on power, broadswords, warhammers, axes, weapons that require strength and rely on it. Westerosi knighthood is built on armor and impact, on the collision of two forces, on who can absorb more damage and keep standing. Braavosi water dancing is built on something else entirely, on the space between attacks, on reading, on waiting, on moving so precisely that your opponent's strength becomes irrelevant. It is built on the principle that you are never quite where he expects you to be. It suits Arya so completely that the first lesson feels less like learning and more like being handed a language she already half knew. The core of the training is philosophical before it is physical. Syrio doesn't begin by teaching her footwork or grip or guard positions. He begins by teaching her how to see. Really see, not what she expects to see, not what she wants to see, but what is actually there. He holds up his hand and asks her what she sees. she sees a hand. He corrects her. He directs her attention to each finger, the shape of the knuckle, the way light catches the nail, the small scar on the inside of his thumb. A swordsman who sees the hand has already lost. A swordsman who sees everything has a chance. The lesson is not mystical. It is practical. In a fight, the thing that kills you is almost always something you weren't watching. People look at the weapon. They should be watching the eyes, the shoulder, the shift in weight before the arm moves. She takes to this with an urgency that surprises even Syrio. She has always watched people, always noticed things others walked past, and he is simply giving her a framework for something she was already doing. The training becomes daily. The sessions are hard and often humiliating. Syrio is not gentle with her mistakes, though he is never cruel. He raps her knuckles when her grip is wrong. He steps aside from her attacks in ways that make her stumble and look foolish. His corrections are always exact, always technical, always useful. He does not encourage her in empty ways. He tells her what is wrong and how to fix it. This is the highest form of respect he knows how to offer, and Arya understands it as such. The question comes, the question she will answer for the rest of her life. What do we say to the god of death? Not today. It sounds simple, 3 syllables, and there is genuine wit in Syrio's delivery of it. It carries the dry pleasure of a man who has thought about this more than most. But the simplicity is the point. Death is not a distant abstraction in Westeros. It is a daily presence, in the streets, in the wars, in the unpredictable cruelty of powerful people. Most people deal with this knowledge by not thinking about it. Syrio's philosophy is the opposite. Face it squarely, acknowledge it completely, and then refuse it. Not today. Not because today is special or protected or guaranteed, but because the choice is made to still be here. The choice becomes active. It is made every morning. Arya hears this, and something settles in her. A thing that had been formless getting a shape. She will spend years not fully understanding what Syrio gave her in that phrase, but she will carry it regardless. She will carry it in every cell, in every decision, in every moment when stopping would be easier than continuing. The training ground is her sanctuary, and everything outside it is growing worse. Ned's investigation into Jon Arryn's death is moving him toward a truth that is going to destroy everything, though nobody knows that yet. The court circles around the Starks with the patience of predators who know they don't need to rush. Cersei watches Ned with eyes that give nothing away. Littlefinger smiles his permanent, impenetrable smile and offers help that always costs more than it appears to. Joffrey is already showing the edges of what he will become. The sudden cruelty, the need to see other people diminish. His charm shuts off without warning and something cold and indifferent replaces it. And then comes the incident at the Trident. Arya and Joffrey are in the riverbank meadows outside the city. The encounter with Micah, the butcher's boy, a child, a playmate, a completely ordinary boy with nothing to protect him, spirals out of Joffrey's boredom and his need to exercise power over something. He draws his sword on Micah. It is not training, not a game. It is cruelty looking for a target. Arya intervenes. This is not a calculated decision. There is no strategy in it. She sees a boy about to be hurt, and she moves, which is exactly who she is, without hesitation and without a plan. She hits Joffrey with a stick. She disarms him. Nymeria bites his arm when he turns on Arya. The prince is on the ground, bleeding, and briefly and completely powerless. He screams. Arya knows, with an immediacy that is almost physical, what this means. She sends Nymeria away into the woods to save her life. The wolf she loves more than almost anything. Her extension, her wildness made visible, her companion. She drives her away into the woods to save her life. It works, and Nymeria escapes. But the loss of her is immediate and total. It is the first of many things she will give up to keep something she loves from being destroyed by a world she cannot control. Before the Queen and the court, the truth is useless. Joffrey lies with the fluid confidence of someone who has never once been held accountable for anything. Sansa, trapped between the prince she has been encouraged to love and the sister she actually loves, cannot remember. That is its own kind of truth, and its own kind of betrayal, though a forgivable one. The Queen orders Lady killed, Sansa's wolf, a substitute punishment, blood for blood, delivered with the smooth bureaucratic efficiency of people who are comfortable hurting things. Ned kills Lady himself, because he cannot bear to let it be done carelessly by someone who doesn't understand what it means. Micah is killed by the Hound on the road, because a prince said so, because power said so. Arya is brought before the court and says nothing useful to her cause, because the cause is already lost. The truth has no weight here. King's Landing's first systematic lesson, not the training yard lesson, not Sirio's careful philosophy, but the raw civic truth of the capital. In rooms like this, facts do not determine outcomes. Power does. Whoever controls the room controls the verdict. She files this away. She does not forget it. The training continues. The world outside continues to rot, and then the rot reaches them. Ned is arrested. The Lannister guards come for Arya in the middle of a training session. Armored men, armed men, men with the authority of the crown behind them. Syrio Forel stands between them and his student with a wooden practice sword, a stick against steel and numbers. He does not ask Arya to stay and watch. He tells her to go, now, run. She hesitates for a second, and Syrio fills that second with everything he has left to teach her. His eyes are calm. His feet are already moving into position. He is not performing courage. He simply is not afraid. Or if he is, the fear is so far beneath the surface that it cannot reach his hands. She runs. Behind her, she hears the sounds of the fight beginning. She does not look back. She never sees him again. His fate is never confirmed. Not fully, not definitively. He is simply gone from her story, the way a great teacher sometimes disappears, not with ceremony, not with a proper ending, but with one final lesson delivered in an action rather than words. He gave his life, or his freedom, or both, so she could keep running. The first kill comes in the chaos of her escape. A stable boy, a boy her own age, grabs her before she can get past him. He is doing what people do when powerful forces demand it, following orders, trying not to be punished, caught between his own survival and hers. She drives needle into him without time to think. He falls. She keeps moving. She does not stop to examine what she has done. The city is closing around her like a fist. There is no time for anything except forward. She finds Euron of the Night's Watch in the chaos, a recruiter, a rough and practical man. He is someone who has navigated the underworld of Westeros long enough to know when a situation requires immediate improvisation. He grabs her and cuts off her hair with a knife, right there, without asking. She is no longer Arya Stark. She is a boy, a recruit, a name that fits in the mouth without catching on anything. It is the first time she becomes someone else to survive. She doesn't resist it. There is no time to resist it. And, more importantly, some part of her recognizes the logic instantly. The name Arya Stark is a target. The name Ari is nobody. Nobody can disappear. She has already, in the training yard, learned the value of being where your opponent doesn't expect you. This is the same lesson, applied to identity instead of footwork. What Syrio gave her in those months of training was not technique alone, though the technique will save her life repeatedly for years to come. He gave her a way of organizing the world, precision over power, patience over aggression. Watch everything, commit fully, and when the god of death leans over you with his hand extended, look him in the eye and say, "Not today." She will say it many times before this is over. Some moments don't function as transitions. Transitions are gradual, negotiable, something you can feel yourself moving through. And then there are breaks, clean and total. The world is one thing, and then a blade comes down, and the world is another thing entirely. The person standing in it has to decide, in the seconds immediately following, whether they are going to survive it or not. Arya had her break on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor. But before that moment arrives, there are the days in between. The days after Ned's arrest and before the execution. When King's Landing is a city holding its breath. Arya is somewhere inside it, alone, with Needle and a false name and no plan beyond the next hour. She sleeps in the Red Keep's rafters the first night, not metaphorically, literally above the ceilings, in the spaces between floors where the cats go and no one else bothers. She had spent months exploring the castle the way she explored everything, not because she expected to need the knowledge, but because standing still has always been harder for her than moving. Now that knowledge keeps her alive. She knows which passages are watched and which are forgotten. She knows how to move through the building without using the corridors that the Lannisters have already claimed. She is hungry. She is frightened, though she would not use that word. She is alone in a way she has never been alone before. Not the comfortable solitude of a girl who wants space from her family, but the total exposure of someone whose family has been stripped away and who cannot yet see what comes next. She catches a pigeon in the yard, eats it raw because she has no fire, keeps moving. Yoren finds her before the Lannister guards do, which is a margin so thin it barely deserves the name luck. He is in the city on Night's Watch business, recruiting, always recruiting, pulling men from the dungeons and the gutters and the edges of the law and taking them north to the wall. He knows what a dangerous situation looks like, and he knows what a child in danger looks like. He makes a decision immediately, the way practical people make decisions, without theatre or hesitation. He cuts her hair. He gives her a name and folds her into the group of recruits he is moving out of the city as soon as the gates allow. Ari, a boy, a nobody. She accepts it completely because she has no alternative. Syrio's training has given her a framework for understanding what disguise actually is. It is not deception for its own sake. It is positioning. You put yourself where you need to be, wearing whatever face that position requires. The goal is not the mask. The mask is the method. She keeps this clear in her mind. She is Ari on the outside. She is still her on the inside, in the place where the list will eventually live, in the place where everything important is stored. The city is loud with what has happened to her father. Ned Stark, arrested for treason. The hand of the king, the most honorable man most people in King's Landing had ever come within 100 yards of, accused of plotting against the throne. The story the Lannisters are telling is already everywhere. The markets, the taverns, the docks. People are debating it the way people debate things that don't directly affect them, with the comfortable distance of spectators. Arya moves through these conversations like smoke, listening, saying nothing, learning the shape of the lie that is being constructed around her father's name. She cannot reach him. She cannot tell him she is alive. She can only wait. Waiting has never been her strength, but she waits. Then comes the morning when Yoren tells her they are leaving. The city gates will open, and his group will walk through them and head north, and she will be among them. She will be gone before anyone thinks to look for a lord's daughter disguised as a recruit. She has to be at the sept first, as Yoren has something to arrange. A last piece of business before departure. The crowd at the Great Sept of Baelor is enormous. King's Landing turns out for spectacle, and the Lannisters have arranged this as spectacle. The public confession, the public accounting, the visible demonstration of what happens to men who oppose the crown. Joffrey is there, on his throne-like seat, wearing his kingship with the aggressive self-satisfaction of someone who has never once in his life been told no. Cersei is there, reading the room with the focused attention of someone who has written this scene in advance. She is watching to make sure it runs as planned. Ned is brought out. He is thinner. The weeks in the black cells have cost him something physical, something in how he carries himself, though the bearing is still there underneath. The Stark bearing, the thing that cannot quite be broken even when everything else can. She sees him from the crowd and something moves in her chest. Yoren grabs her from behind, his hand over her eyes, his voice in her ear, low and direct, telling her not to look and to find something else to focus on. She fights him. Of course she fights him. He is stronger. Ned Stark confesses his treason on the steps of the Sept, in front of the entire city, in front of gods old and new. He says the words Joffrey's court has required of him. He is doing it because he was promised that his daughters would be spared, that he would be sent to the wall, that this performance of surrender would purchase their safety. He is doing the most Ned Stark thing it is possible to do, choosing the lives of the people he loves over his own dignity, his own reputation, his own story. Joffrey listens to the confession. The court listens. The crowd listens. Then Joffrey pronounces sentence. Sir Ilyn Payne is brought forward. The King's Justice, the headsman. He is carrying ice, Ned's own greatsword, Valyrian steel, the sword of House Stark, a blade that has been in the family for generations. It is the sword Ned used to behead men he had himself sentenced to die. He always said the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Arya doesn't see it. Yoren holds her face turned away. She hears it. The sound of the crowd changes, that unmistakable shift in a large crowd sound when something that cannot be taken back has just happened. A held breath released wrong. A roar that starts as shock and becomes something else before it fully forms. The city of King's Landing is processing in real time the fact that the king has just executed the most honorable man most of them had ever seen accused of anything. He did it in public, with his daughter somewhere in the crowd. Arya goes somewhere else. Her body is still in the square, still held by Yoren, still surrounded by the noise and the press of bodies. But something inside her relocates. The part of her that was Ned's daughter, that believed in the world he had described to her, the world where justice existed and honor mattered, and the truth had weight. That part steps back from the window and goes somewhere quiet and dark and begins to wait. What comes forward in its place is harder and more useful, and, for the moment, entirely necessary. The list begins. It begins almost automatically, the way the mind reaches for structure when everything else has been taken away. She is a girl trained to see clearly, to notice everything, to remember. She begins to remember the people who did this. Not just the people who swung the sword, but the people who built the room, who arranged the players, who manufactured the crime and staged the confession, and turned the machinery of a kingdom against her father, until there was nothing left of him but a head on a spike. Cersei Lannister, Joffrey Baratheon, Ilyn Payne, the Hound. The names are not yet a ritual, not yet the prayer they will become. Right now, they are simply facts being recorded by a mind that has decided, in the absence of any other available action, to remember, to hold the names, to not let them dissolve into the noise the way everything else is dissolving. Tears are not available to her here, not in this square, not in front of these people. She has Needle. Yoren has her by the collar, and the crowd is still moving around them. She lets herself be led. War does not look the way songs describe it. Songs describe war as movement and clash, as the meeting of great forces on defined fields, as moments of courage that resolve into outcomes. Heroes appear in songs. The right side wins often enough that the singing of it feels honest, or at least hopeful. The Riverlands in the first year of the War of the Five Kings looks nothing like a song. It looks like a village with no roof left on any building and no people left inside them. It looks like a road lined with the bodies of men who were not soldiers, farmers, tradespeople, fathers, killed because they were near something an army wanted, or because killing them was easier than not killing them. It looks like children standing in the ruins of things that used to be homes, staring at soldiers passing through with the blank expression of people who have already cried everything they have. They are simply waiting to see what happens next. Arya walks through all of it on the road north. She does not look away. The instinct when confronted with systematic suffering on this scale is to manage your exposure to it, to find the mechanisms that put distance between yourself and what you're seeing. Arya does not do this. She sees every village. She sees every face. She registers the weight of each ruin, each loss. On the road north, there had been a cage, a wagon dragged behind a column, iron bars blackened with old use, holding 3 men who were not meant to arrive anywhere alive. They had been taken for something, no one ever said what, and were being transported toward a death that had already been decided for them. Then the fighting came, not a battle in any structured sense, just soldiers colliding in the way armies do when they are moving through the same piece of land with different intentions. Fire followed, quick and careless, catching on wood and cloth and anything that would take it. The cage caught, and the men inside began to burn. Most people looked away. Some shouted. No one moved to open it. Arya did. She went to the wagon, because leaving them there was not an option that made sense to her. The heat pushed her back, smoke in her eyes, the iron too hot to touch for long. She found something heavy enough to break the lock, struck it once, twice, again, until it gave, and the door opened. 3 men came out of the fire. This act to save the lives of strangers, people who were in a cage heading towards execution, could well have been evil people. To stand aside and let them burn alive was not her way. It was not the Stark way. This empathy and the willingness to act on behalf of people she does not know is a string that runs through her entire story. Harrenhal arrives like a bad dream made of stone, the largest castle ever built in Westeros, and also a ruin, melted from the inside by dragonfire 300 years ago. Aegon the Conqueror's dragon Balerion did this, turned the stone itself to liquid, killed Harren the Black and all his sons inside their own walls, demonstrating in a single afternoon that the largest fortress in the world meant nothing against fire that hot. The towers still stand, warped and misshapen, like candles that burn too long on one side, the walls intact but wrong somehow, the stone having set at angles that suggest it was once something else entirely. The Lannister garrison uses it as a base of operations in the Riverlands. Arya is brought inside as a prisoner, still Arry, still performing the boy, still holding the disguise with the careful attention of someone who knows the alternative. The yard at Harrenhal is full of northern prisoners, men taken in the war, thin and frightened, and being held under conditions that communicate clearly that their lives are considered cheap. Every day, Lannister soldiers take a few of them out for questioning. The questioner is a man they call the Tickler. He has a tool, a bucket and a rat, and he asks the same questions in the same order, the screaming audible throughout the castle. Arya hears it and keeps hearing it, not dulled by repetition, not absorbed into background noise. It stays sharp, distinct, the screaming of individual men who have names and histories and people somewhere waiting for them, carried through the ruined towers of Harrenhal, and the Tickler goes on the list. One morning in the yard, she sees him, the man from the cage, moving freely through Harrenhal as a Lannister recruit, wearing the uniform with the comfortable ease of someone who has worn many uniforms. He meets her eyes once, and recognition passes between them. Not warm exactly, but precise. He knows who she is. She knows he knows. His name is Jaqen H'ghar, given with the formality of someone for whom names are a subject of considered significance. The debt follows, the theology of the faceless men, holding that death taken from the god must be repaid in kind. She freed 3 men from a burning cage, and 3 lives, therefore, are owed in return. He will kill 3 people for her, her choice, her names. Arya's list has been, until this moment, an internal document, a record maintained in the absence of any mechanism to act on it. Now someone is handing her a mechanism, and she does not hesitate. The first name is the Tickler, and he is dead within the day. 1 name crossed, the mechanism proven. The second name comes from urgent necessity, rather than the list. Sir Amory Lorch, a Lannister knight, catches her with a letter she should not have, and moves to report her to Tywin. She names him, and Lorch falls before he reaches Tywin's door. Tywin Lannister is already at Harrenhal, and Arya is taken into service as his cupbearer, serving wine, and standing at the shoulder of the most powerful man in Westeros, while he conducts the business of winning a war. She refills the cups of men planning campaigns, stands in the background during meetings where strategy is discussed, and intelligence is shared, and decisions are made that will kill thousands, listening to every word with the focused attention of a girl trained to see exactly what is there, not what she expects to find. Tywin notices her. He is the most perceptive man she has ever been close to, shaped by a life where reading people incorrectly costs everything. He looks at Arry the cupbearer and sees that she is more than she pretends to be. Something educated, something northern, though confronting a child about her origins is beneath his dignity. So he speaks to her instead. Not warmly. Warmth is not in Tywin's emotional vocabulary, but with the attention of a man who values intelligence wherever it appears. She gives him nothing that confirms who she is, but enough real thought that the conversations continue. She performs calm and ignorance and servitude while standing beside the man whose family destroyed hers, hearing his plans, watching him conduct a war that is killing the people she loves. Every day is a performance sustained by absolute clarity. If she breaks, she dies. If the disguise slips, she dies. She does not break. 2 names used, 1 remaining. She looks at Jaqen and names him, and he goes very still. Arya has found the edge of the rule he lives by and pushed directly against it. He cannot refuse, but he does not want to obey, so he offers her a different path. Unname him, and he will give her more than a single death. She agrees, and that night Harrenhal fractures from the inside, guards dying in the dark, cells opening, northern prisoners flooding the yard, and in the confusion, she runs. Later, he finds her and changes his face before her eyes, pressing his hands to his features and rearranging his face into something entirely different. A new man standing where the old one was. The transformation so complete and so impossible that her mind takes a moment to accept what her eyes are showing her. He holds out a coin, iron, small, unremarkable, and gives her a name. Vala Morghulis. If she ever needs to find the faceless men, if she ever wants to learn what he knows, she should give this coin to any man from Braavos and say those words, and a door will open. Then he is gone. She puts it away, close to her body, and does not speak of it. The Brotherhood without banners presents itself as exactly what it says it is. Outlaws who protect the small folk. Men who have stepped outside the law because the law stopped working, who fill the gap between what justice is supposed to be and what it actually is in a kingdom at war with itself. They ride under no lord's banner. They answer to no king. They take from the powerful and they shelter the weak. And they believe, with the kind of belief that has been tested rather than inherited, that what they are doing matters. In this version of the world, they are heroes. She wants this version to be true. She wants it more than she has wanted most things since King's Landing. Because she has been without a category to belong to for so long that the Brotherhood feels briefly like somewhere she might fit. People who are angry at the right things. People taking action on behalf of the people the war is consuming. She wants this version. The world provides her with a more complicated one. The Brotherhood's men capture Arya and her companions professionally. They are taken to a cave where Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion hold court. Outlaws with principles, which is either an oxymoron or the most honest thing in the Riverlands, depending on your perspective. The Hound is brought in shortly after, captured on the road. He looks at the Brotherhood's cave with the expression of a man who has catalogued the exits and is running numbers on his odds. He looks at Arya, and she looks at him, and between them passes the current of mutual recognition that has nothing to do with warmth. He killed Micah. She knows it. He knows she knows it. He does not look away from this, which is something, though it is not enough. Arya tells the Brotherhood what he did. She says his name and she says the name Micah, and she recounts what happened by the trident in the meadow outside King's Landing. Beric Dondarrion hears her out and sentences the Hound to trial by combat. The old law. The way disputes were settled before the courts, before the septons, before the machinery of institutional justice was built and then corrupted. Arya watches Beric light his sword on fire. The Hound flinches. He cannot help it. Fire is the thing. Fire is always the thing. His brother put his face in a brazier when he was a child, and the scar runs all the way down, and the flinch runs deeper than the scar. He fights through it anyway, using his size and his fury and his absolute refusal to accept any outcome except survival, until his blade finds Beric Dondarrion's chest. Beric falls. The Hound stands. The Brotherhood goes quiet in the way of people waiting for something they believe in, but cannot be entirely certain of. Thoros moves to Beric's body. He kneels and speaks the words in the old language of Essos, the language of the Red Faith. Arya watches the body on the cave floor and waits. Beric Dondarrion opens his eyes. He stands up. The wound is gone, and he is alive, or something close enough to alive that the distinction doesn't matter for practical purposes. Arya processes this with the same careful attention she applies to everything. She does not dismiss it, because she is not a person who dismisses things she has seen with her own eyes. Magic is real. She files this fact alongside all the other facts. But the fact she is most immediately focused on is simpler and more enraging. The Hound won. The Brotherhood releases him. The law is satisfied, or so they say. The Lord of Light has declared the Hound innocent. He walks out of the cave alive and free, and Micah is still dead, and nothing has changed. The mechanism of justice has run to completion, and produced an answer that is, from where Arya is standing, indistinguishable from injustice. She tells Beric this. She tells him it isn't fair. She says it to the man who was just dead, knowing how absurd it sounds, knowing that her argument is emotionally coherent, but institutionally incoherent. The trial has been conducted. The verdict has been rendered. The system has spoken. Beric looks at her with the patient sadness of a man who understands her argument completely and does not have an answer that will satisfy it. He apologizes. The Lord of Light's will is not always legible from the ground. The apology lands and changes nothing. She stays with the Brotherhood for a time. Then Melisandre arrives at the Brotherhood's camp. She comes for Gendry. She comes knowing what he is, Robert Baratheon's bastard. King's blood, the kind of blood that powers the rituals of the Red Faith in ways that other blood does not. The Brotherhood has sold him. They believe Melisandre's purpose is holy, believe Stannis' cause is the right side of the war. They take the gold and justify it as being in service of something larger. Arya watches this with the fury of someone who has just watched an institution betray its own principles in real time. The Brotherhood exists to protect the vulnerable from the powerful. The Brotherhood sold him anyway because the cause she represents is, in their calculation, larger than the individual. She confronts them. She says what she thinks. Thoros and Beric have no clean answer. They are not bad men, but they have done a thing that cannot be entirely defended. Then the Red Priestess looks at Arya directly. She looks at her, and she is quiet for a long moment, and she says, with the flat certainty of someone reporting a fact rather than making a prediction, that she sees darkness in those eyes, a darkness that will shut many eyes. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Arya does not know what to do with this. Melisandre leaves with Gendry. Another departure. Another person gone. The Hound reappears on the road like a bad answer to a question she didn't ask. He kidnaps her. This is the honest description. He grabs her and tells her she is going to River Run, or to the Twins, or to wherever Robb Stark is, because there is a ransom on her that will solve several of his immediate problems. She goes with him because the alternative is to fight a man twice her size in an open road with no help available. She goes with him maintaining with absolute clarity the understanding that he is on the list, that his name is there, that nothing he does in her company changes what he did by the trident to a boy who had no sword and no army and no protection. She does not forgive him because he is carrying her somewhere useful. She simply waits. The road forces an answer eventually, not in any single moment of reckoning, but through the slow accumulation of days, weather, hunger, and proximity. What do you do with a person who has done something unforgivable, when that person is the only thing standing between you and everything else that wants to kill you? Arya spends months finding her answer. She does not like the answer she arrives at, but she is honest enough to accept it. The arrangement between them shapes everything that follows. The arrangement between them is transactional and undisguised from the beginning, which is actually one of the more refreshing things about it. The Hound wants gold. Arya is the mechanism by which gold will be obtained. He will deliver her to Robb at the Twins, or to River Run, or to wherever Robb currently is, and he will collect whatever ransom her brother will pay for a Stark sister alive and largely intact. She will get home, or closer to it. Neither of them pretends this is anything other than what it is. This is, in its own way, a relief. She hates him. This remains true throughout. His name is on the list. It stays on the list. She does not cross it off because he is walking beside her. The debt is the debt. Proximity does not cancel it. But she watches him. She cannot help watching him. She watches everything, and the Hound is, whatever else he is, genuinely interesting in the way that contradictions often are. He is the most honest person she has spent sustained time with, since Syrio Forel. Where Syrio was precise and philosophical, the Hound is blunt to the point of violence, expressing his honesty through the flat refusal to observe any of the social conventions that soften uncomfortable truths. He says what he thinks. He has always said what he thinks. This has made him enemies and also made him, paradoxically, one of the more trustworthy people in a world full of people who survive by saying what is useful rather than what is real. He tells Arya things that nobody else has been willing to tell her. Not because he is trying to educate her. He would reject the description with contempt, but because he has no interest in managing her expectations or protecting her from uncomfortable information. The world is brutal. The powerful do what they want. Honor is a story the highborn tell themselves so they can feel better about the advantages they were born with. Knights are the most reliable source of violence in the realm, and the holy vows they take are the thinnest coat of paint over what they actually are. She argues with him about this. She was raised to believe that honor is real and that it matters. But she argues with diminishing force as the months pass, because the evidence he is pointing at is the same evidence she has been collecting since King's Landing. Her own ledger is beginning to agree with his conclusions, even as she wishes it wouldn't. The knights killed Micah. The knights sacked King's Landing. The Kingsguard protected the Mad King while he burned people alive because their vows required it. The institution of knighthood, the whole elaborate apparatus of it, the vows, the accolades, the songs, the chivalric code, does not prevent violence. It channels violence and brands it with a seal of legitimacy. He knows this more intimately than anyone. The story of Sandor Clegane's face emerges in fragments over the road. He was a boy. He had a brother. The brother found a toy, a wooden knight, a thing Sandor had made himself, and burned his face in a brazier for it, for playing with something the brother had discarded. The brother was not punished. The brother was rewarded, knighted eventually, elevated, given power over other people. The institution looked at what Gregor Clegane did to a child's face and saw a man worth cultivating. The institution had no mechanism for the child screaming in the Clegane courtyard with half his face destroyed. Arya hears this and does not say she is sorry. He would not want that, and she is not built for it. But something shifts in the account she is keeping. Not a forgiveness, that is not what shifts. He has moved from simple villain to something more complicated, and complicated things require more careful reckoning than simple things. His name stays, but the weight behind it has shifted. Then comes the Red Wedding. They are close to the twins, close enough that Arya can feel, for the first time in months, that something resembling reunion might actually be possible. Robb is there, her brother, the king in the north. The Hound knows something is wrong before she does. He has a soldier's instincts, and the twins have a quality to them that his instincts are reading as dangerous. They are in the approach when the sounds change. What comes from the twins is not fighting. It is slaughter, which is a different sound entirely. More one-sided, more final. She tries to run toward it. The Hound stops her, his arm across her chest, physically preventing her from moving. She fights him with everything she has. She is Syrio Forel's student, and she uses the techniques she knows. He absorbs all of it and holds her anyway. He hits her with the flat of his axe, and she drops. She wakes up on a horse moving away from the twins, the sounds of the slaughter fading behind her. He saved her life by preventing her from reaching it. The aftermath of the Red Wedding is its own kind of silence. Not peaceful silence. The silence of aftermath, of a thing so large that the mind cannot immediately find the edges of it. Robb is dead. Her mother is dead. The Northern Army is gone. The list is the only thing that doesn't change. She recites the names that night, and they are exactly what they were before. Her one fixed point when everything else has become fluid. Robb and Catelyn are attached to new names. Walder Frey, Roose Bolton. The record is comprehensive. It does not forget. The Frey soldier is the first intentional kill. The soldier is sitting with a group of Frey men at a fire, talking about the Red Wedding with the casual pleasure of someone looking forward to what comes next. He does not know who she is. He is wearing a Stark cloak, a trophy, and he is enjoying himself. Arya steps into the firelight. She identifies herself as Arya Stark of Winterfell, notes that he is wearing a Stark cloak, and takes it back. He reaches for his weapon, and she drives needle into his throat. She takes the cloak and walks back to where the Hound is waiting. He is watching her with the expression of a man revising an assessment. He says she is learning. She does not respond because she does not need his evaluation. But she hears it. She does not feel what she expected to feel. She expected something. Guilt, satisfaction, relief. What she feels is closer to clarity. A sense of a debt partially settled. A sense of action finally aligning with intention. The attack on the road that gravely wounds the Hound comes later. The wound doesn't close properly. He is feverish in the way of infections that have taken hold properly. Still moving, still functional. But the margin is shrinking. He is sitting against a rock at the edge of a cliff with the posture of a man who has run out of forward motion. She stands over him with needle in her hand, and she makes her decision. She doesn't kill him. She doesn't kill him mercifully either. He asks for it. He is not begging. Sandor Clegane does not beg. The architecture of him will not permit it, but he is asking. In the flat, direct way, he asks for things. The fever is bad. The dying is going to be bad. She has the sword. It would be a mercy. She takes his silver, and she leaves him. Across the riverlands, in a port, she shows the coin to a Braavosi sailor. She says the words, Valar Morghulis. The sailor offers her passage across the narrow sea. She takes the passage. She stands at the prow as the ship moves out of the harbour and watches Westeros recede behind her. She does not look away until there is nothing left to see. Braavos does not reveal itself gradually. Most cities, approached by sea, give you time to prepare. Braavos refuses this. Behind a coastal fog, the locals call the Strangler. It gives you nothing until it gives you everything at once. What it gives you first, emerging from the mist like a judgment, is the Titan. A statue 200 feet tall, straddling the entrance to the lagoon, so large that ships pass beneath its legs. Built by the original founders of Braavos, escaped slaves from the Valyrian freehold, people who had been owned and had chosen the open sea over continued ownership. They found this place in the fog and decided to stay and build something that announced itself unmistakably. The Titan is that announcement. Arya stands at the prow and looks up at it and feels something she has not felt in a very long time. Not safety, something smaller and harder to name. A sense that the world is larger than Westeros. She asks the dock workers for the House of Black and White. They point. Of course they point. Everyone in Braavos knows where it is, the way everyone in a city knows where the thing they do not discuss is located. The House of Black and White sits on an island in the center of the lagoon, apart from the city proper. Black stone on one side, white stone on the other. The architecture itself a statement about the nature of what happens inside. She knocks, she waits. She knocks again. She waits. A man opens the door. He is old, or appears old, with a lined face and eyes like deep water, not empty, but with depths she cannot see the bottom of. She holds up the iron coin. The words are given. Vala Morgulis. He looks at her for a long time. She says the name Jaqen Hagar. It means nothing here. He closes the door. She sits on the steps and waits through the afternoon and evening and night. In the morning, the door opens and the old man has a different face. He is Jaqen now, or wearing his face. He lets her in. The interior is a temple, primarily, a temple to the many-faced god, the god of death, the god who is all gods. Every culture in every place across the known world has a name for death and a relationship with it. The Faceless Men's theology holds that all of those names refer to the same entity, the Stranger of the Seven, the Drowned God, all the same, all one God with many faces. People come to the House of Black and White to die, not to be killed, but to be given the gift of death, freely, mercifully, the release from suffering that the many-faced God offers to those who seek it. The Faceless Men attend the dying, offer comfort, and when the time is right, administer it with a kindness that has nothing in common with the violence Arya has been practicing and witnessing. What she has to understand, before anything else, about the institution she is asked to join. It is not an assassination guild in the simple sense. It is a religious organization with genuine belief. The Faceless Men understand their contracts as an extension of that mercy. The many-faced God is owed a death. Someone pays for the privilege of choosing whose. The Faceless Man delivers it as a religious act. Arya spends months deciding whether she believes this. She eventually decides it doesn't matter whether she believes it, because the skills are real regardless of the theology. The training begins without announcement. She is given a room. She is given work, sweeping the floors of the temple, tending to the dying, learning the faces of the many gods represented in the statues that line the walls. She is given the waif as a companion, or a supervisor, or an adversary. The category is never quite settled. Jaqen, or the man who wears Jaqen's face, manages the larger shape of her training from a comfortable distance. The requirement is clear. To serve the many-faced god, she must become no one. She must put down Arya Stark, the name, the history, the desires, the list. She must become a vessel without history. She says she can do this. It is a lie. He knows it. She knows he knows it. They proceed anyway. The Lying Games are the earliest and most sustained form of training. Jaqen sits across from her and asks questions. What is your name? Where are you from? Who are your family? She answers as whoever she is supposed to be that day. A different name, a different history, a different set of parents. He watches her face while she answers and identifies which parts are lies, not which parts contradict the story she is telling, which parts she does not believe as she says them. The distinction is crucial, and it is, initially, impossible for her to manage. She can construct a false history. She can deliver it without obvious tells, but she cannot make herself believe it while she is saying it, not in the full-body way that makes a person's face tell the truth, even when their words are lying. Needle is the record of what she cannot let go. Jaqen instructs her to surrender her possessions. She surrenders them, the Westerosi clothes, the things that attach her to who she was, all of it given up without visible resistance. She keeps Needle. She hides it in the steps outside the House of Black and White, in a crack in the stone, wrapped in oilcloth, as close to her as she can put it, while technically complying with the instruction. She tells herself this is tactical. This is not the full truth. The full truth is that she cannot throw it into the canal. She stands on the canal bank with it in her hand, and she understands, with a completeness that does not require examination, that throwing Needle away is a thing she cannot do. Not will not, cannot. Needle is the last physical object that connects her to Jon, to Winterfell, to the family and the self that existed before the executions and the road and the war. Giving up the coins and the clothes and the name is manageable. These are surfaces. Needle is not a surface. Needle is something structural. The blindness comes after a lie she cannot maintain. She is given a cover identity. Lana, a girl selling shellfish along the Braavosi docks. She sells shellfish, learning the faces of the regular customers, the rhythms of the market, the texture of a life that is not her own. But the lie she cannot maintain is the lie that she has no preferences, that it does not matter to her what happens to the dock workers or the sick children she observes being sold false cures. Jaqen can see this in her face during the debriefs. She is reporting accurately, but behind the accuracy, the investment is still there. He blinds her. She wakes up in the dark and stays in the dark. He takes her sight as payment for the lie she keeps telling. She is helpless for exactly 1 day. Then she starts adapting. She maps the House of Black and White through her feet, through the texture of floors and the shape of door frames, and the way sound reflects differently off the black stone walls than the white. She learns the waif's footstep rhythm well enough to hear her coming before she arrives. Fighting blind reveals how much of what she thought was skill was actually visual habit. The water dancing is in the feet, in the balance. None of that requires eyes. The sight returns eventually. She says nothing about it for 2 days. She practices in secret with the sight restored, recalibrating, integrating 2 complete skill sets simultaneously. The theatre assignment arrives after months of training. She is sent to observe a theatre troupe performing a production of recent Westerosi history. The events she lived through, dramatized for Braavosi audiences who find the political collapse of the Seven Kingdoms entertaining. Ned Stark is played as a pompous fool. Joffrey is played for laughs. Cersei is a pantomime villain. The execution on the steps of the Sept of Baelor is staged as broad comedy. Arya watches from the audience with her face empty. She watches her father mocked. She watches her history performed as entertainment for people who have no relationship to any of it, who are laughing at the death of the most honorable man she has ever known. She watches and she controls her face, and she files everything she sees. Harder than the blindness, harder than the lying games or the waif's instruction. Sitting still with her face empty, while the world performs its version of her history for its own amusement. She comes back night after night. She is building towards something, Jaqen wants an actress named Lady Crane observed and eventually killed. She watches Lady Crane from the wings and from the audience. Lady Crane is talented. She is also kind, in the offstage way that some performers are kind, generous with the younger members of the troupe, careful with people who are struggling. Arya watches this. She cannot stop watching it. She hesitates. She warns Lady Crane instead. She does not complete the assignment. Jaqen sends the waif to kill her. A logical consequence within the system's own logic. She has failed the assignment. She has demonstrated that she cannot be no one. The waif, who has been waiting for this outcome with the patience of someone who expected it, takes the contract with an efficiency that suggests she has been looking forward to it. She finds Arya in the streets of Braavos and stabs her multiple times in the stomach. She leaves believing the work is done. Arya falls into the canal. She pulls herself out. She is losing blood in the serious way. She goes to Lady Crane. This choice contains everything important about what the training has and hasn't done to her. She was sent to kill this woman, and she warned her instead. Now, bleeding and barely standing, she seeks help from the person she protected. She is making this choice not because it is strategically optimal, but because Lady Crane is a good person, and Arya trusts her. Lady Crane tends her wounds, hides her, and lets her sleep. She wakes to find Lady Crane dead. The waif has found them. Arya runs. She leads the waif to her room, the room that is dark when the door closes, completely dark, the kind of dark that requires no blindfold because there is simply no light. She closes the door. She draws needle, retrieved from the steps on the way here, the hiding place found by touch in the chaos of flight. The waif comes in and cannot see. She was in a world of darkness. Arya's world. She brings the waif's face back to the Hall of Faces, and she finds Jaqen waiting. He states that she has become no one. She rejects it. She identifies herself as Arya Stark of Winterfell, and states that she is going home. He looks at her for a long moment. The look contains something that is not quite pride and not quite approval, but is adjacent to both. The expression of a teacher watching a student do something the curriculum did not strictly require. He lets her go. She crosses the narrow sea in winter. The passage is rough and the ship is small, and the crew gives her a wide berth in the way of sailors who have learned, through proximity, that some passengers are more complicated than they appear. She stands at the prow when the weather allows and watches the water with the quality of attention of someone who has decided what comes next and is simply waiting for the geography to cooperate. She is going home. But home requires passing through the Riverlands first, and the Riverlands requires passing through Frey territory. Frey territory is where Walder Frey is still alive, and still hosting feasts, and still recounting the story of the Red Wedding, with the satisfaction of a man who considers it one of his finer achievements. His name has been on the list since the morning she woke up on a horse, moving away from the twins, with the sounds of the slaughter fading behind her. It has waited through Braavos, through the lying games, through the blindness and the waif and the theatre troupe. A debt that knows it will eventually be collected. The debt is coming due. She enters the Riverlands on foot, without announcement, without escort, without anything that marks her as worth watching. She selects a face. She puts it on with the practiced ease of someone who has done this enough times that the wrongness of it has been filed in the same place as all the other wrong things she does without flinching. She becomes a Frey serving girl. The Freys have a lot of everything. Walder Frey's extraordinary productivity has populated the twins with enough Freys and half-Freys and servants that the castle is a small city unto itself. It is full of people who barely know each other, full of gaps, where an additional unremarkable person can operate without friction. Arya moves into that gap. The kitchens of the twins are hot and loud and organized around the immediate crisis of feeding a large number of people on a schedule. The head cook issues instructions. The serving staff move between the kitchen and the hall in the continuous rhythm of a feast in progress. Arya appears to be doing what she is supposed to be doing. She works. She carries. She chops what needs chopping with the efficiency of someone who knows their way around knives in more than one sense. She observes the kitchen's organization with the attention she has applied to every environment since Harrenhal. Where the food comes from, where it goes, who has access to what, which stages of preparation offer the opportunity she needs. She bakes a pie. It is a good pie, technically. She's been baking since hot pie taught her the basics on the road north, has improved through Braavos practice, and she applies everything she knows to this one. She brings it to the feast herself, wearing the serving girl's face, carrying the dish with appropriate care. Walder Frey is at the high table. He is old and querulous and perpetually aggrieved, the lord of a castle at a strategically important river crossing, who has spent his entire life leveraging that strategic importance into everything he has. He is proud of the Red Wedding. He does not experience it as a crime or a violation of sacred law. He experiences it as a triumph. He sits at the high table and eats and is entirely himself. He does not look at the serving girl who refills his cup with the attention that would save his life. He has never in his life looked carefully at serving girls. She fills his cup. She asks if the meat is to his liking. He says it is. He asks where his sons are. He had expected them at the feast. She tells him they are already here, closer than he thinks. He looks at her then, for the first time, with the beginning of a question forming in his eyes. She removes the face. Recognition arrives on Walder Frey's face as the understanding of a man who has never before been required to inhabit the consequences of his own actions. He has been safe in his castle, collecting the rewards of the Red Wedding, attending feasts, recounting stories. The consequences of what he did lived in other people. He has never had to look at those consequences directly. He is looking at them now. The contents of the pie are explained in the flat, informational tone used for things on the list. She watches his face as the information lands. She draws the blade. The last thing Walder Frey sees is her face, the real one, the one she was born with. Not a Braavos serving girl, not Ari, not Lana, not no one. The face that the list belongs to. She cuts his throat and holds the position until it is finished. The watching is the final part of the reckoning. It is not cruelty or satisfaction, but completion. The second part is less intimate and more systematic. The Frey men, the soldiers who carried out the Red Wedding, are gathered at a celebration elsewhere in the Riverlands. She wears a different face, serves the wine herself, prepared with the same care she brought to the kitchen at the Twins. She informs them before she leaves that the North remembers. Completing a name you have carried for years is not what you expect. Relief, satisfaction, the clean pleasure of a thing resolved, none of these arrive. What comes instead is quieter and more complicated. The names are crossed, but the people are still dead. Rob is still dead. Catelyn is still dead. Ned is still dead. The list was never going to undo what was done. It was about holding the truth of what happened in a way that honored the people it happened to. The list is shorter than it was, and shorter in the right direction. They look up when she steps into the firelight. 6 of them. Young. The oldest may be 20. The youngest, not much older than she is. Lannister crimson, but worn in the way that soldiers wear colours after months in the field, the fabric faded and patched, and carrying the degradation of clothes that have been slept in and fought in and rained on with equal regularity. Their weapons are within reach, but not in hand. They are eating. They look at her the way people look at something unexpected. A girl, alone, on the King's Road at dusk, stepping out of the dark into their firelight without announcement. She is small. She is not obviously threatening. She does not look frightened. The oldest one speaks first. He asks if she is lost. No, she says. She asks if she can share the fire. A beat. The beat of a group deciding collectively whether a situation is what it appears to be, and then the oldest one moves over. One of the others ladles stew into a spare bowl without being asked. The automatic hospitality of people who have been cold and hungry enough themselves that they do not require a policy discussion about whether to feed someone who is clearly cold and hungry. She sits down. She eats. The stew is not good. It is functional. She eats it with the focused attention she brings to food whenever food is available. Around her, the conversation resumes. They talk about an inn in the Westerlands, famous for a particular preparation of lamb. They talk the way soldiers talk at the end of a difficult day. Silent, she takes in their faces by firelight, the full picture. Not just the surfaces, the raw humanity that emerges when people have stopped managing each other's impressions. Boys who are tired and cold and homesick, doing a job they were told to do in a war they did not design, wearing the colours of a house whose decisions they had no part in making. They are Lannister soldiers. They also offered a stranger stew from their pot without requiring anything in return. The categories do not resolve cleanly. She holds the contradiction without forcing it to a conclusion. One of them asks where she is headed. North, she says. Home. He asks where home is. She says Winterfell. It lands with a quality of silence, not hostile, but careful. Everyone at the fire is aware of the complicated recent history between Lannister soldiers and Stark names, without anyone wanting to be the one to bring it into the conversation. The oldest one looks at her for a moment and then makes a decision. He says, "That's a long way." She agrees that it is. Eventually someone asks if she has heard about the fighting in the north. She says she's been away for a while. Braavos, she says. This produces genuine interest. The interest of people for whom a distant city across a sea is not yet quite real. Still more story than place. They ask what it is like. She describes it without embellishment. The canals, the Titan, the fog, the light over the lagoon in the early morning. She describes it as someone who has looked at it carefully and stored the details accurately, which she has. They listen with the attention of people being given something they did not expect to receive today. The youngest one asks about the Queen. She tells him the truth. She tells him she is going to King's Landing to kill the Queen. The fire pops. Nobody speaks. Then someone laughs, not mockingly. The genuine involuntary laugh of total surprise. The others catch it. Even the oldest one smiles, though his smile has the quality of someone who is also underneath the laughter, considering. She lets them laugh. She even smiles briefly. The oldest one asks why, not challenging, genuinely asking. She says, because of things that were done to people I loved. He nods. This is an answer he understands. He says, "You'll need a better plan than announcing it to strangers at campfires." She says she knows. This was just an honest answer to an honest question. They let her sleep by the fire. She accepts it. She sleeps. She does not dream. In the morning she leaves before they wake. She takes nothing from them. She leaves the wineskin that was passed to her the night before. She moves north in the grey pre-dawn, the King's Road under her feet, and home as her destination. The gates of Winterfell are closed when she arrives. She stands in front of them in the thin winter light and looks up at the walls, her walls, the walls she grew up inside, the walls she climbed as a child. The castle has been taken and retaken, burned by Theon Greyjoy and partially rebuilt, held by the Boltons and recently won back by Jon and Sansa with the Knights of the Vale. It has been through things that should have changed it beyond recognition. It looks like home. She announces herself to the guards. They look at her, this small, road-worn girl in traveling clothes, alone, without escort, and they do not open the gate. They tell her there is no Arya Stark. She's dead, or missing, or both. She waits, with the patience of someone who once sat on the steps of the House of Black and White through a full Braavosy night. She stands in front of the gate of her own home and does not argue and does not go anywhere. Eventually, someone goes to find Sansa. Sansa comes down into the courtyard and stops. They look at each other across the distance. This is not the reunion of two people who have been separated by manageable circumstances and have arrived back at each other relatively intact. This is the reunion of two people who were last together in a city that destroyed their family. They have spent the intervening years in conditions so different and so extreme that the gap between their experiences is not easily measurable. They have both been so thoroughly remade by everything that happened that the versions of themselves who used to bicker about embroidery are almost theoretical. Sansa is taller. She is dressed in northern grey, the Stark colours reclaimed and worn with the deliberate intention of someone who has decided what she represents. She has the bearing of someone who has survived things by learning to control every visible surface. She is beautiful and contained, and underneath the containment, there is something that has been through fire and come out harder. Arya is smaller than Sansa remembered, darker, more still than she used to be. They walk toward each other. The hug, when it comes, is the kind that belongs to people who are feeling things too large to perform. Two people confirming that the other person is physically present and real and alive. Sansa's eyes are wet. Arya's are not. This is not coldness on Arya's part. It is the hard-won discipline of someone who learned to control her face in the House of Black and White. She will cry later, alone, with the door closed. This is not dishonesty. This is the only way she knows how to do it. The first conversations are careful. Two people circling each other with genuine love and genuine unfamiliarity, trying to find the pathways between who they are now and who they had been as children. Arya observes Sansa the way she observes everything, carefully, completely, building a model. A woman who has learned to survive in the most dangerous social environments in Westeros through the precise management of information and presentation. Sansa has not been hardened in the same way Arya has. She has been refined. The softness is gone, but what replaced it is not brittleness. It is something more like steel that has been worked repeatedly. Bran comes home around this time. The boy in the wheelchair is wearing Bran's face in the same way that a house with all its furniture removed is still recognizably a house. The architecture is there. The person inside the body is something else. Arya goes to him immediately. He says her name, not with the warmth of a brother seeing his sister for the first time in years, but with the quality of a statement of confirmed fact. She is here. He knew she would be. He gives her the dagger, Valyrian steel, with a dragonbone hilt. It was used in the attempt on his life. He passes it to her with the quiet deliberateness of someone completing a transfer that was always going to happen. She asks why he is giving it to her. He states that she will need it. She puts the dagger at her hip alongside Needle. Steel and Valyrian steel. The practical and the extraordinary. Her two weapons, one given by Jon and one given by Bran. Both Stark gifts, both pointing at different kinds of threat. Brienne of Tarth is in the yard when Arya comes back from the Godswood. An extraordinary physical presence, enormous, armoured, the kind of enormity that is matched entirely by capability. They spar in the yard, and the yard fills with observers. Two different schools meeting, the Westerosi tradition of controlled force against the Braavosi tradition of controlled space. The sparring is close, equal even. Two well-trained, disciplined fighters showcasing their skills in an impressive manner. Brienne asks who trained her. The reply is simple: no one. Sansa watches from the edge of the yard with the careful attention she brings to situations she is trying to read fully. She is watching her little sister hold her own against one of the finest fighters in Westeros. What she feels is both gladness and the vulnerability of someone whose skills are invisible. The way that knowing when to speak and when to stay silent does not produce a visual spectacle in a training yard. Peter Baelish watches from the shadows. He watches the sparring with the expression of a man revising his understanding of what he is dealing with. The decision forms. The sisters must be separated. Not physically, too obvious, but separated in the subtler sense, given reasons to doubt each other, given evidence that the other's loyalty is less than it appears. He begins to move. The letter appears because Littlefinger puts it there. A piece of parchment from years ago, Sansa's handwriting, Sansa's signature, Sansa's words, though not Sansa's will. She wrote it in King's Landing under duress, under Cersei's instruction. She wrote to Robb, urging him to come to King's Landing and bend the knee to Joffrey. The letter was never sent. It was kept. Arya finds it. She reads it. The letter is designed to work on exactly the fault line that Littlefinger has identified. Without context, it reads like betrayal. Sansa using the Stark name to endorse the thing that destroyed the Starks. Arya does not have the context. She does not know about the coercion. She brings it to Sansa. The conversation that follows is one of the most painful in the sisters' history. A fight between people who love each other and cannot see each other clearly, because each of them is looking through the lens that their experiences have ground for them. For days after, the distance holds. Littlefinger watches this and is satisfied. What he does not account for is Bran. Bran sees everything. Not metaphorically, the three-eyed raven does not deal in metaphor. He has watched Littlefinger operate for years, which means he has watched the architecture of every manipulation. He tells Sansa. And Sansa, who has been Littlefinger's student in the sense of learning how people like him operate, understands immediately what she has been given. The sisters talk. Sansa explains the conditions, the coercion, the choice between writing it or watching their father die that afternoon. The explanation is framed as information. Here is what happened. Here is what the options were. Arya receives this information and holds it alongside everything else she knows, and the picture that forms is different from the one the letter made. Not betrayal, survival under impossible conditions. She says she would have done the same. This is not a small thing coming from Arya Stark. She does not offer easy comfort. When she says she would have done the same, it is a precise statement of truth. The summons comes in Sansa's name. A message delivered through the castle's internal channels. the quiet network of servants and soldiers that Sansa has been learning to use with the precision of someone who understands that information moves fastest through the people everyone ignores. The Northern Lords are called to assemble in the Great Hall. The message implies, without stating, that there is a matter of justice to be addressed. Littlefinger receives his summons and reviews it with the attention he brings to everything, reading the angle, the subtext, tracing the sequence of moves forward to their most likely conclusion. He has read this castle and its inhabitants for months. He has managed harder rooms than this. He comes to the hall with genuine confidence in his plan. Arya is already in the room, standing to the side of the assembled lords. With needle at her hip, the Valyrian steel dagger alongside it, and the quality of stillness that she has had since Braavos. Sansa stands at the front of the hall, wearing grey wool with Stark embroidery, the direwolf visible at her collar. She has the bearing of the Lady of Winterfell, the genuine composure of someone who has decided what is happening and is prepared for it. Littlefinger enters and takes in the room quickly. He takes in Arya's position. He takes in Bran. He takes in the lords arranged along the walls. In the seconds available, he reads the room, and his reading is manageable. He takes his position in the center of the room with the ease of a man walking onto a stage he has performed on many times. Sansa begins. The first charge is the murder of Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn was poisoned by Lysa Tully, acting on Littlefinger's instructions. Littlefinger provided the poison. He provided the means and the motive and the instruction, and let Lysa execute the plan, keeping his own hands technically clean in the way he always does. The foundational operating principle of Petyr Baelish: arrange the mechanism so that someone else is always the instrument. Sansa states this clearly, without rhetorical elaboration, as a fact attached to evidence presented for the record. Littlefinger begins his response, the calm, reasonable voice, the slight smile, the open posture of a man with nothing to conceal. The allegations are framed as serious. Lysa is framed as troubled. Jon Arryn's death is framed as a personal loss. He is very good at this. Bran speaks. The statement is precise. Littlefinger instructed Lysa to write to her sister Catelyn, blaming the Lannisters for Jon Arryn's murder, and to write the letter before Jon Arryn was dead. The room goes quiet. Not the quiet of a room waiting for the next statement. The quiet of a room that has heard something that changes the shape of everything that came before it. The letter to Catelyn was the catalyst. The information that made Catelyn go to Ned, that made Ned go south, that set the entire terrible sequence in motion. Deliberately constructed misinformation, planted at the beginning of the chain. Littlefinger looks at the Northern Lords. They are looking at Bran with the expression of men who have grown up in the North, who worship the old gods, who have always known that the weirwood trees remember everything. Bran's testimony is not something that requires deep analysis. His word was treated as fact. The second charge is the murder of Lysa Tully, Lady of the Eyrie. Sansa was the witness. She watched Petyr Baelish push her aunt through the moon door, watched the woman fall 600 feet to the rocks below. She is the witness, and she is the one stating the charge, and there is no ambiguity in this testimony. Littlefinger pivots. He speaks of his devotion to Sansa, of everything he has done to protect her. The claim is that everything he has done has been in service of her safety. The love is real. It has simply never prevented him from doing anything. He looks at Sansa and presents himself as the person who understands her best, who has her interests most genuinely at heart. Sansa does not respond in the way he expects. She continues. The third charge is the betrayal of Ned Stark. Littlefinger promised Ned the City Watch. The promise was clear. The City Watch would come when needed. This was the foundation of Ned's plan. The City Watch came under Littlefinger's actual instruction, which differed from what Ned was told. They came with swords drawn and held Ned, while the Lannisters consolidated their hold. Littlefinger's final act in that moment was a statement of warning framed as irony. Bran repeats it now, verbatim, the exact words, spoken in the past in a room that contained people who are now dead. The room hears a boy repeat the exact words spoken in a private moment in a room 1,000 miles from Winterfell. The room understands what it is hearing. Littlefinger looks at Sansa. This is his final move. He appeals to the protection he has offered, the years of keeping her alive, the genuine feeling that he has for her. He says her name. Sansa states the position plainly. He stands accused by Lord Brandon Stark. He stands accused by her. He is given the opportunity to respond. He reads the room one final time, and the room tells him the same thing from every angle. He makes his last speech. It is a good speech, technically. The case lands in the silence, and the silence remains. For possibly the first time in his adult life, Peter Baelish says something without a strategy behind it. He says her name because it is the only thing he has left. Sansa does not respond. She looks at her sister. Arya walks forward from her position at the side of the hall. She moves the way she always moves, without announcement, without the kind of posture that telegraphs intention. She draws the Valyrian steel dagger, the one Bran gave her, the one that was used in the attempt on Bran's life that Littlefinger arranged, the dagger returning to the architect of its original use. She cuts his throat. She does it cleanly, without drama, without performance. She steps back. The room is still. Two people who have just done something together that neither of them could have done alone. The dead come from the north, as they always have. 8,000 years ago they came from the north and the world nearly ended, and Brandon the Builder raised a wall of ice and ancient magic to hold them back. The wall held for 8 millennia. Then the Night King was waiting with chains and a dead dragon and cold blue fire, and the wall came down. The dead walked south. The world has approximately 1 winter to decide whether it survives. The preparations at Winterfell have the quality of all preparations for things that cannot be fully prepared for, thorough, systematic, honest about their own insufficiency. The strategy is built around Bran. The Night King wants him, or so the strategy assumes, based on what Bran represents. The three-eyed raven, the living memory of the world, the last Greenseer. The thinking is that killing the memory kills the knowledge of how the dead were defeated once before. Whether that is the Night King's full design, no one can know. But it is the best theory available, and they build around it. Bran will sit in the Godswood. He will be the bait and the purpose simultaneously. Arya's role in the formal battle plan is not assigned, which is the appropriate assignment for someone whose primary capability is operating without one. Jon knows this. He does not assign her a position. He trusts her to find the position that needs finding. She spends the day before the battle moving through Winterfell, checking the exits, noting the new fortifications, understanding the changes. The castle has been rebuilt since Theon burned it. She walks it all. She commits it to the same internal architecture, where she stored the Red Keep and Harrenhal and the House of Black and White and every other building she has ever needed to know. She finds the Hound in the yard. He is alive. He recovered from the cliff. He is here, waiting for the dead, with the resigned pragmatism of a man who has been surrounded by death his entire life. They look at each other. An entire road in that look. The riverlands, the campfires, the lessons, the cliff. He notes that she is still alive. She notes that he is as well. This is, for both of them, the complete conversation. The night begins with fire and ends in the dark. The Dothraki charge first. Thousands of mounted warriors riding north into the dark with their arrows lit with red priest fire. The flames were visible from the walls of Winterfell in a line that extended across the night. The line goes out, not gradually, all at once, extinguished in a moment, the dark closing over it the way the dark closes over a candle when you cup it in your hands, complete and immediate. Thousands of Dothraki, gone. Arya is on the walls when the Dothraki line goes out, and her assessment is immediate and total. The plan is insufficient. Whatever the plan assumed about the scale of what is coming, the assumption was wrong. She does what she has always done. She moves. The Battle of Winterfell is not a battle in the conventional sense, more like a siege that has been inverted, the living inside the walls, the dead outside. She moves through the castle the way she has moved through every building she has needed to survive, along the walls, through the passages between floors, using height and shadow to her advantage. She is fighting continuously, not the sustained single combat of the training yard, but the intermittent violent contact of a person moving through contested space. The library is where her training truly comes to fruition. She does not plan to end up in the library, moving through the castle's upper floors, trying to reach the Godswood approach. She comes through a door and finds herself looking into a dark room full of wights. Not the fighting kind, things that are searching rather than advancing. They have not seen her. She came in quietly, against the wall. The candles are out, and the library is dark. She does not move. Every session in the basement of the House of Black and White comes back to her now. Jaqen sending her into the dark, instructing her to navigate without sight. She is in a dark room full of things that will kill her if they find her, and the room is the same room she has been training for 2 years. She breathes. She holds herself so still that the darkness does not differentiate her from itself. A wight comes within 3 feet of her. She does not move, and it passes. She crosses the library in increments, each movement sized to the gap between one wight's passing and the next, using the shelving as cover. She reaches the far door. She opens it with the care of someone who manages every variable of the opening. She is through. She runs. Beric finds her in a corridor. The Hound finds Beric. They are a group now, moving together through the castle interior that has been overrun. The wights are coming through a corridor behind them, and Beric holds the door with his flaming sword and his body, and the conviction of a man who has died 6 times and has decided that this is the time it counts. The Hound wants to stay. Beric instructs him to go. Beric dies one last time holding that door. She does not stop to watch him die. She is already through the next door, driving toward the Godswood, toward Bran. Melisandre is in the Godswood approach when Arya comes through the last door, breathing hard, with a gash on her arm that she has not had time to register as pain. Melisandre looks at her. The question is posed. What do we say to the god of death? Arya stops. The night is burning around them. Bran is in the Godswood ahead. The Night King is coming. And across all of it, across the years and the road, across Syrio Forel and the Riverlands, and Harrenhal and the Brotherhood and the Hound and Braavos and all of it, comes the answer she has been giving since she was 9 years old. Melisandre smiles. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. The memory of that earlier statement returns. Arya understands its meaning now. She looks through the Godswood and she sees the Night King. She runs. The Godswood in the heart of Winterfell has been a sacred space for 10,000 years. The heart tree at its center has been here longer than the castle, longer than the kings of winter, older than almost anything that has a name in the history of Westeros. The Night King walks toward Bran through this space with the absolute certainty of something that has never once in its existence encountered something that could stop it. He is tall and ancient and terrible. His eyes the blue of frozen things, the blue of the absence of warmth. His White Walkers flank him. As the Night King stands over Bran, something comes out of the dark. Something small, something deadly. No one. She has been moving since Melisandre's words, moving through the Godswood in the way she moves through every dark space, using the trees, using the shadow. Fast and unseen, moving in the spaces the Night King's attention is not occupying. She comes from above, from the left, from the gap in his attention that she has been navigating toward. The Night King turns. He catches her by the throat. His grip is cold in the way that his cold is not a temperature, but an absence, the cold of a thing that is the antithesis of warmth. She drops the Valyrian steel dagger from her right hand. She catches it with her left. She drives it into his chest. He shatters, not falls, not dies in the way that living things die. He truly shatters, the ice form of him breaking apart into shards. The shattering spreads. The White Walkers shatter. The Whites shatter, every one of them. In the same fraction of a second, every soldier in his army dropping simultaneously. The dead fall like a second snowfall, already dissolving. The battle is over. Arya stands in the Godswood with the dagger in her hand and the heart tree behind her, and the carved face watching with its ancient red eyes. The only sound is the sound of Winterfell in the aftermath, the living realizing they are still alive. She breathes. Not today. The morning after the long night smells of ash and cold. Winterfell in the light is a different place entirely. A battlefield in the dark, a graveyard at dawn. The dead are everywhere. The genuinely dead now, the ones who fell in the battle and will not come back. The pyres burn for days. Arya watches the first pyre from a distance. Beric Dondarrion, who died holding a door so she could move. Theon, who drove his spear at the most dangerous thing in the world and closed the gap with his body. The Dothraki, whose lights went out all at once in the first minute of the battle. Grief does not pause for victories. She learned this on the road, and the learning holds. The march south begins before the pyres are cold. Daenerys wants King's Landing. Jon will march with her. Arya will march with him. The Hound is on the road ahead of her. She catches up to him on the second day. He is riding south with the focused purpose of a man who has one thing left to do. They ride beside each other for a long time without speaking. The road through the Riverlands is familiar to both of them. They crossed it together years ago in the opposite direction. At a fire that night he tells her, if she goes into King's Landing looking for Cersei, she will probably die. Not because she is not capable. He knows what she is. Because King's Landing is a city, not a battlefield. And the person she is trying to reach is at the center of that city behind layers of protection. King's Landing is burning by the time they arrive. Not metaphorically, burning actively and catastrophically. Dragonfire being applied to a city of 1 million people by a queen who has heard the bells of surrender and chosen not to hear them. The city is coming apart in ways her plan had not accounted for. The plan did not account for Daenerys burning it. Arya is inside the city, moving toward the Red Keep, moving toward Cersei, and the fire is everywhere. Buildings collapse. Streets become rubble. The people of King's Landing, the million people who woke up this morning and went about the business of ordinary life, are running. They are dying. Arya runs with them, not away from King's Landing, through it, still moving toward the Red Keep. She knows a route. She takes a woman and child through it. Trapped between a collapsed building and advancing dragonfire, they have nowhere to go. She gets them to the river gate. She does not reach Cersei. The Red Keep is collapsing before she reaches it. The structure that Maegor the Cruel built, the castle that has stood for 3 centuries, is coming down. She gets close enough to see it falling. Cersei's name is crossed, not by her hand, but struck from her list nevertheless. The Red Keep collapsed under the sustained assault. Dragonfire on stone, stone on stone. The whole impossible structure finally giving way. Cersei was inside when it fell, along with Jaime, along with everything the Lannisters had built. The account is closed. The outcome is not the outcome she expected. She is standing in a burning city covered in ash and dried blood and the dust of collapsed buildings, with one name left on her list. She finds the Hound in the ruins of the outer wall of the Red Keep. He is wounded. He has burns. He says Gregor is dead. She doesn't say goodbye to him in any final formal sense. She stands up from the rubble and she looks at him for a moment. The real look, the full look. What lies between them at the end of everything is complicated and unresolvable. She walks away. He watches her go. The names are all crossed, some by her hand, some by the world's own momentum. The list was never about undoing what was done. It was about holding the truth of what happened in a way that honored the people it happened to. They stand at the docks in King's Landing. 4 Stark children, together one last time. Ships wait behind them, the sea open in front of them. Sansa stands beside her, the queen in the north now. Not performing it, not becoming it. She is it. Arya looks at her and sees someone exactly where they are supposed to be. She feels glad for her sister and something else alongside the gladness. Not envy. A clear-eyed recognition of what fits and what doesn't. She tells Sansa that she is leaving, that she is going west beyond the maps into the open ocean, where no one knows what lies. They speak about it plainly, about the distance, about the fact that no one knows what's there. Arya does not soften it, and Sansa does not ask her to. What matters is simpler than the details. They understand each other. They say goodbye. The ship is waiting. She stands at the prow as the ship moves through the harbour. Her eyes forward now. The harbour opens into the sea. The sea is grey and cold and enormous, the sails filling as the ship moves with purpose. Needle is at her hip. It has been at her hip for as long as she has had a hip to put it on. It will be at her hip wherever this goes. The gift of someone who saw her clearly at 9 years old. The record of the first time anyone built something to the exact scale of who she was. She puts her hand on the hilt. She does not draw it. She simply rests her hand on it in the way she has been doing since Jon first put it in her hands. She did not survive by becoming something else. She survived by becoming more completely what she already was. Every place she passed through, Syrio's training room, Harrenhal's yard, the Brotherhood's road, the House of Black and White, all of this gave her more of the capability she needed without replacing the foundation. She looks at the horizon. West of Westeros, no map, no known thing. The open water and whatever is out there waiting to be found. The wind is at her back. The direwolf runs on the bow. Needle is at her hip. She sails west.